Hi, my name is Tom Durkin. I'm with the James W. Foley Legacy Foundation, where I work as the Director of Journalism Safety Education. Before we get started, I just want to extend sympathies on behalf of the Foley Foundation for all of Brent's family and friends and all who miss and love him. I also just want to say thank you, because just as it's important that we have brave journalists that are willing to share stories from around the world, despite the risks and threats, it's equally important that we document what journalists are facing, the threats, the risks that they're willing to endure to make sure that we know what's going on in this world. I'm honored to be part of this panel. We have with us today Juan Arredondo, who is with Brent, as well as Lauren Walsh, who's recently joined the Foley Foundation, working on a journalism safety toolkit. We know that journalists face a lot of physical risk. I felt it personally. Not only my director of safety education at the Foley Foundation, James Foley, was my best friend. And so when I see a documentary like this, it all comes back. What it's like to lose somebody who's just doing good work, who's just trying to bring stories, and they're being targeted. And we're unfortunately seeing that come home. It's coming here now. Journalists, when we started the Foley Foundation, we were thinking about conflict journalists, and we realize now we need to think about all journalists and the risks they face and the threats and the vitriol that's directed at them. So one of the things we're going to do with this panel is we're going to look at it from a little bit of a different angle. We know that journalists face physical risks. We know there's physical threats. One of the things that's been evolving and that we're happy to be part of is we're starting to think about the emotional toll that journalists face, the trauma, their mental health. And we need to be thinking about that in ways that we make sure that journalists are able to continue to do that work. Juan, I was hoping to start with a question for you. And it has to do with covering conflict and documenting violence and trauma that goes along with it. I'm curious to learn more, like when you're working and you're in those situations, what's going through your mind in those moments? Are you aware of your proximity to danger, or are you able to try to distance it and I'm covering a story? How does that work?
I think my trajectory is a little different in that I grew up in Colombia. It's a country that was in conflict for 50 years. We have the drug cartels. We had these different waves of violence. So to me, violence was something that we normalized, something that last night I also mentioned this. My dad was gunned down by the cartel. I saw a lot of friends die. So I think when you grow up in an environment like that, you tend to internalize violence. When I was first starting, I had no conversations about protection or how to deal with any of this, let alone physical protection, helmets, vests, none of that. So I've been doing this now for 15 years. Over those years, that starts to build up. And I think that's the part that we don't talk about it often, or at least back then it wasn't spoken. You tend to internalize that. It might come up in a conversation with someone. You might hear something that happened, what happened to Jim. So you start hearing some of those conversations. But I just never had a chance to talk about that, only much later in my career. When I was an Eman Fellow, that's where I met Brent, and I met other journalists who had dealt with this. And we would have some conversations around that. So I want to think that maybe our industry is moving the needle more toward protecting those freelancers, such as myself and maybe Jim as well. But I felt that now I think some safe rails are being put in place. And but anyway, that's how sort of like a broad brush, a fast stroke what my career was and how I came to do this work.
Sure, and then Lauren, you've worked around the world as well, and you've also done safety trainings. What are some of the common health, emotional wellness challenges that photojournalists particularly face?
And so in terms of the challenges, like I was in Ukraine earlier this year, and I had conducted a nationwide survey among Ukrainian media workers, so photojournalists, but also reporters and fixers and fact checkers. And it was 80+% were experiencing extremely heightened levels of anxiety. 80+% felt that they had experienced or been exposed to a traumatic episode. And over 90% said that they had no training whatsoever when it came to their own mental health, but wanted it. So I think the challenges range from, PTSD, but that's it's a clinical diagnosis, and kind of walking down from that, it's depression, it's isolation, it's not being able to get out of bed, it's being really stressed out, which starts to make you less efficient as a journalist, which can put you and others at risk because you're not thinking as clearly. Not sure that any of that is super specific to the photojournalist, but the photojournalist, what I will say is they can never report from afar. You can never just pick up the phone and get a quote. You have to be right there, and we saw that a lot in this film. So you're right there, you're right in front of death and injury. I also find in my work with photojournalists that being right there in front of survivors is really hard, right? It's the woman who lost her son, who saved his bloody jeans. Working with survivors can be so traumatizing.
Going back to you, Juan, I have a question. One of the things I hear from freelancers often, particularly, is the fear of saying no to an assignment, and there might be like a reprisal, you're not going to get the next assignment. Do you feel like you are in a position where you can say, like, I can't do that?
I think now, for me, has been difficult to grasp how to cover immigration. As an immigrant, I don't know how to cover my community, Hispanic or Latino community. I don't want to cause harm on them. Obviously, I know I will probably draw attention to myself. So there are things that I'm willing to do. I think that's the least that I can do, is maybe take a little heat, if you will. But there's that constant negotiation. How much do I expose myself? But I'm thinking more, am I exposing my community or those people that I'm photographing, my subjects? How much am I going to harm them? My editors, at least the ones that I work with, have trusted me because either I know the area very well, I have expertise in that community, and then it's just that I think is having this clear communication as opposed to just going and trying to impress people, or you have to be the one in the front line to get that amazing shot.
Along those lines, Lauren, I wanted to turn this to you. If you could change one thing about the culture of journalism to better safeguard the emotional well-being, the mental health of journalists, what would it be and why?
I wish I could change lots of things. What I wish is that every news outlet and every freelancer would build a mental health awareness into their risk assessments. So if a risk assessment can be kind of broadly broken down as a before, what kind of research do I need to do? What do I need to bring with me? During, what happens in the moment? And then after, how do I kind of debrief? I wish every piece of that included a mental health component.
When I started, none of that. So I didn't check in with anybody. I would just go out on assignment. And so it took a long time. So if I had to change something, it's maybe, and now that I teach, I try to early on affect students and tell them, before you do any of this, this is some of the things that maybe you should be thinking about before.
We've often thought about protecting journalists overseas. I don't view it that way anymore, at least personally. Like, what do you guys think? What do U.S.-based journalists have to start preparing for? What should they be aware of, even? I know that's a broad question, but there's a lot happening here.
Yeah. Okay. So traditionally, the safety sphere was focused on conflict for obvious reasons, and the United States has made it, sadly, onto a bunch of indices because press freedom is going down here and threats against press is going up. In addition to the physical threats, there's now a lot of legal threats, which have been covered in the media lately. Financial threats in some regards, which is to say that fewer people are paying for their news. So there are fewer journalistic jobs, which means a greater freelance pool. There's growing digital threats. Journalists get doxxed, which is like their private information gets put out publicly, essentially a call to go intimidate and harass them. I think the list could go on from there.
From a practical standpoint, I think get off of social media in the sense that don't give your location, don't engage in these conversations, don't put your subjects at risk by giving their location. I know I do that when I cover immigration stories. I know we're in a cycle now of posting and posing, and I've stopped that for a while now, just because I don't know what those risks are.
One of the things that gives me hope, I work out of Marquette University, and the amount of young people that are still passionate about becoming journalists and wanting to write. So I feel like that gives, we're bringing up all the difficulties, but I do think there's signs of hope, and we just have to find our way through to make sure that we keep young, talented journalists in the fold. Are there any questions from the audience, if anyone would like to?
Well, you did talk about, I guess, some of the swimming lanes that are developing for how to keep people safer. If, let's say, you're not working for the New York Times and so on, what are your resources then when you're not as well financed?
I think there's some organizations that are willing to provide some of the resources. I'm part of Diversity Photo, so they also have a newsletter where they're publishing resources for journalists. I think some photo agencies are also starting to do workshops. J schools are also starting to do that. There are some professional collectives that are trying to provide information. CPJ has also some resources. Now the Jim Foley Foundation. So I think more and more the work that these organizations are doing are because of a response to what is happening.
There's another one called ACOS Alliance. There's Rory Peck Trust. There's IWMF. They are out there, but you do have to be alert enough to know they exist and to get to them. And some of them specialize in certain kinds of safety. So you can go in one direction for digital safety, another direction for identity-based safety, right? Because being a minority or female journalist in the United States, it's gotten much more dangerous. There are some that open up to journalists and are free, but there's really not enough, and it is hard for freelancers to get that kind of in-person 2-day training sessions.
Yeah, I would say with the Foley Foundation, about a decade ago when we started going to colleges and universities, they would flat out say, we teach journalism, we don't do the safety part. And then we just argued that safety is part of journalism. If we go talk to a college university, none of them say we won't do it or don't do it. They struggle on how to do it.
What do you guys think about the advantages and the challenges of someone with autism working in a conflict zone?
I work with Brent, and there was something about Brent that I got along with. I understood what triggered him. He was hyper-focused, which came across sometimes as he was difficult, or he was just not so. It was maybe the word is not socially awkward, but it just socially was not maybe bridging with people. And I felt that my job was that buffer around Brent. So that does not mean that autistic people should not be journalists or cover conflict or cover stories. He had a unique sympathy and an approach to subjects.
It was the humanity that I saw in Brent that I recognized as being the same in Jim, which made them really good journalists. Please continue to support journalists. I mean, we need them, and they need us to be supportive in any ways that we can. So again, thank you very much. We really appreciate it.